you've hit the wall, you plotted out the spreadsheets, you consulted all the experts, you spent the money.
Right, you schedule the therapy.
Exactly. You did all the things, and, well, everything still completely fell apart.
It is honestly the worst feeling.
It really is. And today, for our deep dive, we are looking at a 50-year-old document that claims that your problem isn't that you aren't working hard enough. The problem is that you're actually trying to do God's job.
Which is, I mean, it's an incredibly confronting premise, right?
Oh, totally.
Because our entire, modern societal default setting is built around this assumption that if we just optimize our routines or, work harder.
Or think smarter.
Yeah, exactly. We think we can essentially engineer our way out of literally any difficulty or tragedy.
Right.
We're basically conditioned to believe that anxiety is just a sign that we haven't solved the puzzle yet.
We really do treat life like an escape room.
We do.
But the document we are diving into today, it's called the Surrender Novena. Full text and how to pray it. And it just completely upends that entire mindset.
It really does.
It introduces this profoundly counterintuitive approach to modern anxiety. And looking at the core concept here, it is absolutely going to make overachievers squirm.
Oh, it definitely will. I mean, the central, highly uncomfortable claim of this text is that our panic and our exhaustion, they come directly from usurping control.
Right.
But we need to define our terms immediately here, because the premise of the Surrender Novena is not that surrender means abandoning your responsibilities.
But it's not giving up.
Exactly. It doesn't mean you just, lie down in traffic and surrender to the universe.
Yeah.
It means handing over the ultimate outcome and only concerning yourself with executing the next right action today.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because my immediate reaction to that is, well, severe skepticism.
Sure.
If I am facing bankruptcy, right, and I don't micromanage my finances, I lose my house.
Right.
So isn't this just a very poetic recipe for passivity? I mean, we are so used to operating as the project managers of our own lives.
We really are.
We show up with our clipboards and our Gantt charts, and we say, all right, here's the timeline, here are the deliverables I need by next Tuesday. So how do you reconcile handing over the outcome without becoming completely apathetic?
Well, that is the crucial nuance here. Because passivity says, I'm not going to look at my bank account because I'm scared, and whatever happens, happens.
Okay.
Surrender, in this specific context, says, I'm going to make the budget, I'm going to apply for the jobs, but I am going to completely detach my internal peace from whether I get the exact job I applied for.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, we plan, we run the numbers, we prepare, but we cross a line when we start, replaying conversations in our heads at 3 in the morning.
Ugh, the 3 a.m. spirals.
Exactly. Thinking that our frantic mental hypervigilance is somehow actually solving the problem. The author of this prayer is basically arguing that God is waiting for us to stop that frantic project management so the actual underlying resolution can begin.
That makes the distinction so much clearer. But to really grasp how this specific prayer dismantles our, project manager, we have to look at the man who wrote it.
Yes, we do.
Because frankly, if this was written by some billionaire on a yacht, I'd throw it out.
Oh, completely.
But Father Dolindo Ruotolo's life was essentially a masterclass in enduring absolute powerlessness.
Precisely. The profound, radical trust demanded by this prayer only makes sense when you understand the crucible its author was subjected to.
Right.
Father Dolindo was an Italian priest. He was born in Naples in 1882, and he lived until 1970. And despite the massive global impact his words are having today, his actual day-to-day life looked incredibly small.
Yeah, and often deeply humiliated from the outside anyway.
Very much so.
He lived in this tiny apartment with his sister for most of his life. But what is staggering to me is his output. He wrote over 30,000 pages of material.
30,000 pages. It's wild.
It's unbelievable. Pages on scripture, theology, the spiritual life. And this wasn't just, random musing.
No.
It was deeply grounded in a very specific tradition called classical Catholic abandonment spirituality, which honestly sounds a bit intense.
It does sound intense.
So what exactly does abandonment mean in this theological sense? How does it function?
So abandonment spirituality is this fascinating psychological and theological mechanism. It draws heavily from the Gospel of Matthew, specifically the teachings against worrying about tomorrow.
Okay.
But it was really crystallized by figures like St. Teresa of Avila and this 17th century writer named Jean-Pierre de Caussade.
Right, de Caussade.
Yeah, he wrote about the sacrament of the present moment. And the mechanics of abandonment dictate that you view every single event in your day, especially the disasters, the interruptions, the
It
failures.
tells you the bad stuff.
Exactly. You view them not as random chaos, but as specifically permitted by providence for your ultimate good.
Wow.
It's the active, intentional discipline of believing that even in a catastrophe, there is a hidden architecture of grace at work.
So it isn't giving up at all. It is an aggressive reframing of reality.
Yes, very aggressive.
But for Dolindo, this wasn't just some academic exercise. He faced brutal earthly struggles. He suffered from terrible misunderstandings within the church hierarchy itself.
Really severe ones.
To the point where he was actually suspended from ministry. I mean, the
Yeah.
accusations against him were investigated and eventually completely dismissed, and his suspension was lifted. But that took years.
Years of waiting.
I just keep trying to put myself in his shoes. How does a man locked in a small apartment, suspended from his life's work, publicly misunderstood by his own community, how does he manage to write 30,000 pages without becoming just consumed by bitterness?
Well, because he applied that exact mechanism of abandonment to his own reputation. His physical confinement and that ecclesiastical suspension, they forced a literal, inescapable surrender.
Because he couldn't fight back.
Exactly. When you are suspended and under investigation, you cannot defend yourself. Your plans for your life are just vaporized. He had to let go of the one thing we all fiercely protect, which is his right to be understood.
Wow, the right to be understood. That's huge.
And because he processed that powerlessness not as a punishment, but as a severe grace, his writings carry immense weight.
Right.
When he writes about trusting the divine plan when everything is literally falling apart, he isn't offering cheap platitudes from a pedestal. He is speaking from the trenches of complete human defeat.
And that authenticity was completely obvious to the people around him. I mean, Padre Pio, who is an absolute titan in Catholic history, explicitly called for Dolindo a saint. He
Did.
Padre Pio would literally tell pilgrims who traveled to see him, he'd say, go to him in Naples.
Yeah, he completely deferred to Dolindo.
Which says so much. And that legacy holds up. I mean, his cause for canonization was officially opened in 2017.
Which is really a testament to the enduring power of his witness. But what is truly remarkable, I think, is how his hard-won ability to stop defending himself, his ability to sit in silence and just listen, translates directly into the unusual structure of the prayer he left behind for the rest of us.
Yeah, let's get into that structure because it is incredibly disorienting at first glance.
It really is.
If the goal is to break our addiction to control, the prayer itself has to attack our usual coping mechanisms. And he designed this not as a list of human demands, but as a strict discipline of receiving.
Right, so the mechanics are very specific. A novena is traditionally a 9-day prayer practice.
Okay.
This particular one takes about, 5 to 7 minutes a day. You read a very short meditation, and then you repeat a core refrain 10 times, slowly. Yes. And that refrain is, "Oh, Jesus, I surrender myself to you. You take care of it."
Here's where it gets really interesting, because usually a novena, like the Novena to St. Jude or St. Joseph, it's a petition.
So they're asking for something.
Exactly. You are bringing a highly specific request to heaven. But in the Surrender Novena, the text features Jesus speaking directly to the soul.
Yes.
You aren't offering a petition, you are receiving a teaching. It's almost entirely designed to stop you from asking for things. I mean, prayer usually feels like handing a highly detailed to-do list to the sky.
Oh, absolutely.
This flips the script entirely. It's like getting a voicemail from God telling you to put your phone down and stop trying to help.
I love that analogy. And that structural reversal is vital to its psychological efficacy.
How so?
Well, think about why the text demands you repeat that refrain 10 times slowly. When you are panicking about a biopsy result or a foreclosure, your brain's default mode network is just spinning at 100 miles an hour.
Projecting catastrophic futures.
Exactly. Repeating, "You take care of it," 10 times acts as an interruptive mechanism. It forces your neurological system to physically and mentally decelerate. It redirects your language center away from problem solving and anchors it on a single pacifying concept. It is literally a method of prying our fingers off the steering wheel, thread by thread, repetition by repetition.
So if we are getting this 9-day voicemail that forces us to stop talking and listen, what exactly are we being told? Because when you examine the actual text of these daily meditations, it systematically dismantles every single one of our favorite coping mechanisms.
It is a brilliant progressive exercise in human psychology. It doesn't just say, don't worry. It attacks the actual function of worry.
Right.
It starts in days 1 and 2 by addressing the futility of our anxiety. Text clarifies that true surrender does not mean offering a worried prayer where you are secretly just asking God to follow you around and validate your anxiety.
Right. It explicitly states it is deeply against surrender to fret, to be nervous, or to desire to think about the consequences of anything. And to explain why, it uses these piercing analogies in days 3 and 4. There's the analogy of the sick child who wants his mother to take care of him, but also wants to take care of his own worries.
Right.
So his chaotic childlike efforts actually get in his mother's way.
Such a powerful image. And that leads into the analogy of the doctor, which is perhaps the most devastating critique of modern prayer in the whole text.
Oh yeah, day 4.
The meditation says, you are not sick people who ask the doctor to cure you, but rather sick people who tell the doctor how to do so.
Oh man.
We don't just want intervention. We demand that the intervention adapts to our specific ideas.
I see this constantly in my own life. We treat God like a line cook at a restaurant.
Yes.
We hand him the exact recipe with hyper-specific step-by-step instructions for our careers and our relationships. And then we are outraged if the dish comes out even slightly different than what we plated in our heads. Instead, the premise here is that we should be trusting the Michelin star chef to feed us the exact nutrients he knows we actually need, even if it tastes bitter at first.
That is a perfect translation of the concept. And once you dismantle the arrogance of our petitions, days 5 and 6 move to radically redefine how we actually engage with God's will.
Right.
It essentially retranslates the Our Father. It states that praying thy will be done is the exact same mechanical action as saying, you take care of it.
But I want to push back on what happens next in the text in Day 6 because it touches on the most terrifying part of human existence. What happens when you do this, when you say you take care of it, and the situation genuinely gets worse?
Yeah, that's the hard part.
The sick person gets sicker, the money fully runs out. The text addresses this head on, asking, you see evil growing instead of weakening. Do not worry. Close your eyes and say to me, you take care of it.
Right.
It promises there is no medicine more powerful than that loving intervention. But how on earth do you maintain that when the house is literally burning down?
Well, it requires a profound understanding of spiritual warfare, which is exactly where days 7, 8, and 9 go. The text frames this instinct to panic not just as a psychological weakness, but as a targeted spiritual attack. There is a severe warning in day 8 about how our sleepless agitation is actively used to remove us from God's protection and throw us into what the text calls the jaws of human initiatives.
The jaws of human initiatives. I cannot get over that phrase.
It's so visceral.
It so perfectly captures that frantic 3 a.m. urge to just, email everyone, spend money, burn bridges, or force a premature solution right this second because you just cannot stand the discomfort of waiting.
Exactly. And the text identifies that urge as a destructive force. In day 9, it explicitly instructs the soul to view thinking about the future as a temptation.
A temptation.
It says, turn away your thinking from the future as from a temptation.
I have to admit, I struggle with that. Unpacking that idea is radical and, frankly, deeply uncomfortable for me.
Sure. It is for most people.
Because our modern society actually rewards future tripping. We call it being prepared.
Right.
We applaud people who have 10-year plans, contingency funds, and risk management strategies. Isn't being prepared a virtue? How can thinking about the future be a temptation?
So preparedness is a virtue. Obsessive future planning rooted in fear is a temptation.
Okay.
The distinction lies in control. When you are buying life insurance, you are acting prudently in the present. When you are lying awake, vividly imagining your family's destitution if you die, you are future tripping.
Ah, I see.
For Dolindo is identifying that obsessive mental time travel as a temptation because it pulls your consciousness out of the present moment. And as we discussed earlier with abandonment spirituality, the present moment is the only place where God actually operates and where grace is actually dispensed.
Wow.
You cannot receive grace for tomorrow's hypothetical problems today.
That is profound. You cannot receive grace for a hypothetical. But, of course, anyone listening to this who is in the middle of a nightmare scenario is probably wondering, does reciting these words actually change anything externally?
Does it work?
Yeah. When the rubber meets the road, does it actually work?
This is where we have to be incredibly intellectually honest. Yes, something happens, but it is rarely what you thought you were asking for.
Okay.
This novena is a practice, not a transaction.
So it isn't a psychological vending machine where I put in my 10 repetitions and get a cured disease.
Right. It's not a cheat code you type in to bypass the hard level of a video game.
Whoa.
It is much more like a physical therapy exercise.
Ah, okay.
The repetition hurts at first, you resist it, but it rebuilds a totally different spiritual muscle.
Yeah.
The external situation may not immediately resolve,
Yeah.
but what consistently happens is that the internal grip loosens.
Right.
The sleepless hours shorten. That catastrophic future you were playing on a loop finally stops running. Day 9 explicitly says, I perform miracles in proportion to your full surrender to me, but those miracles are often much quieter than the fireworks we demand.
The miracle might just be that your nervous system finally downregulates enough so you can sleep through the night while the storm is still raging outside.
Exactly.
And practically speaking, the guidance is to pray this whenever a burden becomes unbearable, or to build a consistent rhythm with it. Pray it on your morning commute, your lunch break, or start it on the first of every month.
And if you are going to try building that rhythm, utilizing audio tools is highly recommended. Specifically, using Ave audio.
Ave audio, yeah. And just so we are totally clear on the pronunciation for everyone, that is Ave, like the Latin Ave Maria, not Avenue.
Right, Ave audio. It provides a guided experience of the novena, and the reason that is so mechanically helpful is that hearing the words spoken aloud in a measured, paced voice physically forces you to slow down.
Oh, that makes sense.
It prevents you from rushing through the text and helps you actually hear the perspective of Jesus speaking those words directly to you.
It creates that necessary friction to stop your racing thoughts, because ultimately you are training your mind to release what you were never strong enough to hold in the first place.
Precisely.
But I have to ask one final, really challenging question on behalf of the listener.
Go for it.
So, what does this all mean? If the external situation doesn't change right away, and what happens is mostly just our internal grip loosening or anxiety dropping, is this really just a very sophisticated psychological coping mechanism? Or is there a genuine promise of divine intervention here?
That is the ultimate tension. But we have to realize that true divine intervention often begins by fixing the most broken variable in the equation.
Okay.
And in almost every human crisis, the most broken variable is us.
Wow.
It is our own agitated, panicked minds. Think about how many bad decisions we make because we are acting out of pure fear. Think about how many fragile situations we completely destroy because of our frantic human initiatives.
Too many to count.
Right. By loosening our internal grip first, God brings calm to the primary chaotic element. And once we are calm, the right decisions, the next right thing to do today, finally reveal themselves.
So they work together.
Yes. The psychological relief is absolutely real, but it is the prerequisite for the divine intervention to unfold, not a replacement for it.
That reframes the entire concept of answered prayer. To recap our deep dive today, the Surrender Novena really is an invitation to resign as the general manager of the universe.
Highly recommend resigning.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you stop caring about your life, your loved ones, or your responsibilities. It just means you stop demanding that reality conform to your specific blueprint before you allow yourself to experience peace.
Perfectly said.
And if you are in a difficult season right now, you aren't alone. The church has been carrying people through impossible, unbearable seasons with these exact tools for 2,000 years.
It is a profound legacy of endurance. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on the mechanics we've discussed today. If you pray this novena exactly as instructed, repeating that refrain 10 times a day for 9 days,
Yeah.
that is 90 individual times you must actively choose to drop the rope. Think about that. What does it say about human nature? That our default state is such a desperate death grip on control that it takes 90 intentional acts of surrender just to pry our fingers open.
Man.
Perhaps the greatest miracle of the novena isn't that God finally steps in, it's that we finally step out of the way.